Awesome, thank you. Cool. Hello, y'all. I'm Alexis Ginsberg, Senior Product Designer, currently working on the plan stage. I'll be chatting with you a little bit about roadmaps, and then I'll hand it over to Holly to tell you about her exciting Jira importer work. So first, let's start with what a roadmap is. In a nutshell, a roadmap helps a team understand where they are, where they want to be, and how they could possibly get there. It's basically a document that helps lay out product vision both short and long term, usually over the course of a year or so. It helps our teammates in product communicate key priorities with both internal and external stakeholders, which lines up perfectly with our main job to be done in roadmaps. So the larger and more functional job here is I want to view the status of planned work items within the roadmap from a high level down to a very granular view, so I can craft the right roadmap for the right audience. So right roadmap, right audience. Basically, many jobs within this are about communicating goals and progress to stakeholders and building trust with them by setting and meeting expectations. The term stakeholder here is pretty fluid, so it could be multiple roles at multiple levels. Our next goal is to move roadmaps from minimum to viable, and to get more GitLabbers using our roadmaps instead of Google Docs and Excel, as some of them currently do. Through customer interviews and feedback, we have some solid assumptions on what could help get us here, as you can see in the epic. I'll highlight 3 things we're currently working on that will hopefully get us on track. So when I came into the plan stage and then moved into the portfolio management team as DRI, the roadmap looks something like this. So as you can see, we weren't really too far off from some of the competitors I showed in the previous slide. This feature was only in the product due to some really great work of a few designers here at GitLab, so I had a great foundation to start iterating and building on. One of the first items needed in roadmaps to make them more useful for planning is showing progress of planned work. We already allowed users to see how their epics mapped on a timeline, as you saw before, but they had no context as to how these epics were progressing. This is especially important as in that job I showed previously, we point out the need to be visible to stakeholders as to which goals will be delivered and if they'll be delivered as expected. Many of our competitors depict this progress as a gradient on the epic bar itself. This is not only not very accessible, but mapping that progression on the same axis as time could lead users to think that, for instance, they completed 50% of their epic on a given date, and that's not what we're trying to convey. That's something, as you can see, Victor pointed out 2 years ago. So I looked at different competitors and I thought about how they displayed progress and how this can map to our roadmap. I then chatted through this with the awesome Jeremy, who you'll hear from later, and we ideated on how this could look. The MVC we landed on was adding a progress bar as its own object on the epic bars themselves. The progress metric here is based on weight at the moment, but in the future, we may allow users to configure this by maybe issue completion or maybe some other metric in the future. The second improvement we really wanted to focus on was allowing users to view their milestones within the roadmap. This gives users even more context as to how their work is progressing and if everything looks on track to hit a milestone or a higher level goal in general. I talked more in depth about milestones during our last showcase about time boxes and sprints, but short version is that we use milestones a bit differently than other products. We allow users to specify a start date and an end date, or both, or neither. Many other roadmaps represent milestones as one point in time, so it's like a milestone marker on a road. This led to some interesting design challenges. I did some competitive analysis here again, and I thought about how we could display milestones if we displayed only the due date at the first level. I got feedback here that we need to display both start and end date for MVC. Also, we have many constraints in general around how we fetch the entire group's milestones in our roadmap, and it scrolls horizontally, kind of seemingly infinitely. So there's some performance issues there. So we decided we wanted to start very small, and we'll gather feedback around this. We'll do more research on more coming improvements on things like pinning milestones to the top, hiding milestones, and even just improving milestones visually in general. the last improvement I'll touch on, I'm trying to speed through this, is allowing users to view the hierarchy of their work in the roadmap in general. So MVC here is displaying the child epics that live within each parent epic, as epics are the only item within the roadmap currently. The main objective here is to allow users to dig into a larger goal, so an epic, and view more granularly the progress and status of the items that will help them complete that goal. So again, this ties back to that job. This was a big request overall and appeared many times in our research. So like I said, again, it helps our users communicate status of their work to stakeholders at different views. So it will become increasingly important as we add items like issues, and we're also working on tasks. So those could be displayed in the roadmap at a hierarchy level as well. So immediate next steps here. We're doing a category scorecard around roadmaps and hoping to get some feedback around its maturity, and also these issues that I just talked about that are either released or being released soon. I'd like to iterate on the way we view information about items in the roadmap. So milestones, epics, in the future, issues and tasks. So I would like to allow users to view more information without ripping them out of the context of the roadmap themselves, by like either opening a new tab or going to another view overall. And actually, I would also like to work through how we allow users to set timeframes on the roadmap, because I touched on before, we're having some performance issues given the amount of stuff we fetch on load. So eventually we would like to have users set their own timeframes that they want to focus on. And then maybe even more future scope would be allowing them to kind of brush and zoom within that. So I will definitely be pinging some analytics minded folks around that. And just visual improvements as well, reorganizing the left column, thinking about initiatives or how to display teams or groups within the roadmap as well. So that is roadmaps in a nutshell. I am going to hand it over to Holly to talk about Jira Importer. I am going to stop sharing my screen, so take it away, Holly.
Thank you, Alexis. Let me get my sharing up. Give me a thumbs up if you can see. Wonderful, thank you so much. So awesome work, Alexis, as always. Hello, everyone. I am Holly Reynolds, Senior Product Designer here on the Plan team, and I'm here to talk about Jira Importer. So let's start with the problem that we're addressing. We believe that we need to provide users who are considering adopting GitLab as their project management tool with a way to quickly import Jira project data within the product so they can explore its features in a way that will most simulate their day-to-day tracking. So currently users can import CSV data from Jira, but CSV imports only work for a small subset of the issue metadata, including things like, title and description, but not things like custom fields and comments. So the goal of the importer is to allow proper mapping of Jira users and their issue activity to the corresponding GitLab user. This will ensure that the importer successfully recreates historical, accurate Jira issues within our product. So the MVC concepts that we're exploring here are really just going to be the first step in providing that additional support for users when migrating data from Jira to GitLab, including the long-term vision of offering user mapping, support for mapping of custom fields, traceability reports, and more. Jira commands 34% of the market share. So in order to capture some of this market share, we need to provide adequate solutions to the business use cases that organizations hire Jira to solve, and lower the cost of switching by making the transition process from Jira to GitLab as frictionless as possible. In terms of business value then, we need to lower the barrier to adoption by making it effortless to migrate from Jira to GitLab, which we believe will help to increase adoption. So while we don't currently have sufficient product capabilities to satisfy the full gamut of business use cases, writing this importer first enables us to use adoption rates as kind of a barometer and leading indicator when we start reaching the inflection point of making a tangible dent in Jira's dominance within the marketplace. So from a process perspective, I wanted to start with a basic user flow. I felt that there were a lot of opportunities for this, and it was kind of a niche case. So I really felt like I needed to kind of outline what that experience might look like from start to finish for our users. So I created a couple of flows and showed how they tied together. And this included the user creating an import from a Jira project into an existing GitLab project, and then separately when creating a new GitLab project and also doing an import at the same time. So this flow just kind of outlines that. And I think that I've got a link in the slides here to this flow and to my other whimsical screens if anyone wants to look at those at a little bit of a deeper level. So I got to work with a couple of other stage groups on this one, which was really exciting. I always love that. Daniel, who is over the import section in Manage, he and I worked together to talk about how that import process needs to complement one another, because I was working on the import from the issues list screen, and he was handling imports from the actual new project standpoint. So we worked together on that. Also worked with Libor on the Verify team because he was making some changes to the Jira integration screen, and collaborated on how our pieces might fit together. So that was a really good activity to do. Also collaborated frequently with my project manager and the FE and BE devs to iterate on those wire flows. So we actually got together synchronously and spent a couple of hours once or twice just sorting through all of the different possibilities and talking through the flows, talking through the technical possibilities as well. And it was some really good collaboration time. We also created a survey and have started collecting some user feedback so that we can kind of understand what next steps need to be in terms of value to the user. So for the MVC itself, we are providing users with the ability to import issues from Jira, which currently contains 3 pieces of information, and that is simply a title, a description, and the reporter, which is the user that is importing the data. This is very, very early stages, so we want to continue to learn through the research issue that we've created and understand what the value will be to the user in terms of next steps. So just very humble beginnings for this particular feature and the value that it has to offer initially. So issues or imports will show in the issues list with a predefined scoped label in a format that includes something like this. I recognize it's a very long label. So this is something that we're actually talking through today and just making sure that we're exploring all of the possibilities. But what we're trying to convey here is that this is a Jira import, and then the Jira key, which is represented here by the word demo, and then a timestamp, date and timestamp. And that will help users in particular to know what project they're importing from, that it's a Jira import, and then the day and time that it was actually imported, which is valuable in particular if you do multiple imports from the same project to the same GitLab project. We want them to be able to differentiate between those imports. So that's kind of the vision for that label right now. We are exploring some other options, such as instead of a date and time stamp, maybe doing a number that just adds on incrementally as they import more and more, but we don't expect that to happen very often. So we're thinking that might be an edge case, but that's something also that we want to understand as part of our research. So for next steps, we're planning to work on the user mapping within the application from a technical standpoint. There are also lots of fields that we want to understand in terms of value. What will be most useful for the users to get first? Would it be something like comments or having attachments, that sort of thing? So we've got a long list of items that we're having users rank for us and give us feedback on as part of our research to help us to know what is going to be most valuable in terms of next steps. We have created a blog post entry. Well, it's not quite on the blog yet, but the issue has been created for it to get added to the blog so that we can kind of raise a little bit more interest in and get some more activity in terms of that survey. And then we have some user interviews that we're hoping to go through to understand what will be the most valuable feature, again, for us to explore in terms of next steps. And then hopefully creating a prototype to ensure that the processes such as merging existing issues and resolving conflicts between imports of issues can be seamless. And I've included links, of course, here to the research issue and the blog post if anybody wants to explore those further. And that is all that I had. I didn't time it, so I'm not sure if I'm under or over on time, and I apologize for that. But does anyone have any questions for myself or Alexis?
I just want to say, like, someone pinged, I think, Harris about feedback, and we link our issues to the agenda. So, of course, always feel free to leave feedback.
All right, I'm not sure who is next.